What's up, guys? I had to take a deep breath for that one. Oh man, out here on the job site bringing you a new Word Study Wednesday from the inside of my dump truck cab, and we're going to begin right now.
For your sake, Israel, he will do all these things. Hope in Yahweh. Oh, Israel.
All right, so here we are, Word Study Wednesday, Shalom, and we're going to look at the word judge. There's one Greek word, or maybe a couple of different Greek words that I'm surrounding this study from, but you take that Greek word into the concordance of the Septuagint, and what's interesting is we see, I think, 13 different Hebrew words for this one Greek word, and that's crazy because in our culture today, we'll take that word judge and I think we misuse it in a lot of different ways. So we're going to dive on screen here in just a moment, and I'm going to show you the instances in the New Testament where I take the word judge and we're going to trace it back, and I'm going to show on the screen some pictures of the concordance to the Septuagint, where I had actually highlighted the Hebrew words, because there's really only two that are used predominantly for this one Greek word, although there is like 9 or 10 other Hebrew words that are used. But we're going to see from the context the two main ones that are concerning the way we use this word in our culture today and how it should be properly defined in its biblical context. That kind of down in the corner for you guys. Here we are, and we're at Genesis 16:5. And the reason we're here is because we'll see one of our words. Now, I'll put up the graphics in just a moment so that way you can see the concordance to the Septuagint of where I looked and where the examples are. I'll have them highlighted for you. You'll have to bear with me due to size. So if you need to, pause the recording and look at each usage of that Greek word in the Septuagint, and then look where they use the Hebrew word in every given verse, and try to base your interpretation on the context that's given. And remember, that's the key thing here, is remaining in the context. Now, I'm sure you've experienced or have known someone or been involved with somebody who's experienced observing somebody, usually a friend or a family member, doing something that you know is wrong and confronting them with it. And I'm pretty sure you've also had the response given to you, hey, don't judge me, or you can't judge me, or they even quote the King James, judge not lest you be judged. And so you kind of wonder, is that scripturally or contextually correct of how we're using that, you know, because someone's being confronted and they hear that phrase, they don't want to be judged, right? You know what I mean? They're not looking for your judgment. Oftentimes they're looking for your acceptance or your approval. They're not looking to be told or corrected into the right manner. I should know this because in my younger years, I never did care what people thought, regardless of what I was doing. Thankfully, I now have the Messiah in me, so I tried to live my life according to his word. So I'm sure that at some time or another, we've all heard that response, judge not lest you be judged. But again, I don't believe it's the context of the verse. They're misusing it. And most people say these words from what the passage of Scripture, or I mean, most people don't even know these words from the context of the Scripture passage they're quoting. And we're going to look at Matthew chapter 7. So let's go over there first before we go back to Genesis, because I'm going to show you how we got to that. So when we go to Matthew chapter 7 at verse 1, we've got, judge not that ye be not judged, verbatim from the Messiah. But if we look at the scriptures, it says the same thing, but without all that poeticness. Do not judge lest you be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. That's a lot of judging. And with the same measure for you used, it shall be measured to you. And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? So in reality, he's saying here, you know, you shouldn't be hypocritical about your judgment, meaning do not be judging other people when you yourself don't even have your own life in order. I can't come to you if I'm an alcoholic, a drug addict, a prostitute. Those are just absurd examples, I guess. But what if I was a habitual liar? Or what if I was someone who was in the business of just always criticizing and tearing people down rather than building them up? What if I was a thief? And here I am, one of these, what am I trying to say here? Here I am as one of these definitions of a sinner, or whatever you want to use there. And I'm trying to give someone else who's actually trying to live their life according to the word. I'm trying to give them advice on how to do it. And I'm doing it in a condemning or a judging manner, as if I'm looking down on them for they're doing something wrong. Yet I'm not able to look at my own life and look at myself as it being in the wrong according to the word, alcoholic or a thief or sex addict or coveting like materialistic things or whatever. And obviously they'd probably be looking back at you like, what is wrong with this guy? How are you going to tell me how to live my life when you yourself are living in such a chaotic mess yourself? And that's kind of where we're at with this. And then you just have the people who are arrogant and don't even want to hear, hey, don't correct me. You don't have no right to. Only God or only the Almighty, only Yahweh can do that. You don't have the right to do so. But I want us to look at what this word really means, because I think we've kind of twisted this scripture around for our own self-justification. And I get it. Not a lot of people like being corrected, especially when they're caught in the wrong. I never did. But I appreciate it now because it helps me learn from my failure and my mistakes. How can you expect to be successful if you can't learn from your failures? I think failures are a great way to learn from, so you don't repeat the same mistakes twice or three times in some cases, and you can grow. You can be a more better experienced you. And this could be a whole subject or topic for many hours or many videos, but I think it's really easy to understand once you see the word in the Hebrew and get its biblical context behind it. So the meaning of the Hebrew word behind our English word judgment is that we can see it has really little to do with confronting someone with something that you discern is wrong. Just flat out. That's kind of what we're going to see here. The Hebrew word generally translated as judgment, or sometimes even to plead, is shafat. And that's why I was at Genesis 16:5, I believe it was, earlier. Because you see here, do not judge lest you be judged. And so we can go into the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, and it shows all the Greek above, the Strong's numbers there. Judge not that you should not be judged, and it's Greek number 2919, krino. We can also look at this in the King James and see judge 2919, and we get the same thing. We get the Thayer's definitions right here. We go down to the Strong's definitions, properly to distinguish, that is, decide mentally or judicially, by implication to try, condemn, or punish. And then we got the colon and the hyphen, that everything after that is, of course, by the translators. So the way we follow this back to the Old Testament is, one, you can get the concordance to the Septuagint and look up, hopefully you're skilled in the Greek to look up all the letters and the words, or you can come here and do it fast. We want to look up G2919 search, and we want to change this to the polyglot. Okay, and search again. So Genesis 15:9, we want to skip that one. Okay, Genesis 15:14. So we'll click on that, and here we see, but the nation, and this is the Septuagint, because you can see here we're in Genesis, and we got Greek writing above the Strong's numbers again. So here we go, but the nation whichever they may be slave to, I will judge. So here we got the Greek number used in the Septuagint that our Messiah just used as well. Well, not our Messiah, but the writings of what our Messiah spoke in Greek. So Greek Strong's number 2919, same one. So what we'll do is we'll change this back over to the King James, and then we'll see our word. And also that nation, whom you shall serve, will I judge. Now look here. We've got Dune. This actually comes from Dan, where we get the name Dan. To judge, contend, plead. But you were saying, Chris, I thought you were telling us shafat. It was shafat. Okay, good call. And this is the problem that we run into. That one Greek word goes back to both of these Hebrew words. And that's where we can run into error trying to discern or interpret what is actually scripturally being said. Now, obviously, we can kind of pick apart what judging is in our own definition, but there's a reason why there's two different types of Hebrew words, because pictographically they do mean different things. Each of them might have a similar function, but they do have different meanings behind their words. And so what I want to do is skip up to the next chapter, because we can also take that same Greek word and trace it right to here, to this word judge, 81:99, from Genesis 16:5, and here's our shafat. And in fact, I guess I'll show you that. So, okay, let's go back on screen here. Here's the search tool. Let's go back to the polyglot. Okay, let's hit the search button. So 15:14, 16:5. Okay, so here's the search key, or I guess queue that came up with all the pages where this Greek word is used. I don't have time on this video to go into why we're not choosing 0.1, but what we want is the whole number without the decimal points. So Genesis 15:14, that's the one we just read. Now look at the very next reference, Genesis 16:5. Here it is again, Greek 29:19. And I just showed you in the King James that Genesis 16:5 was shafat. Meanwhile, the first verse we looked at, Genesis 15:14, was dune. Dalet, Yod, Nun. And in the second reference, same Greek word, mind you, same English word, but two different Hebrew words. And that's what I want us to kind of emphasize on. So let's, before we go any further, let me go back here and look at shafat on screen. So we got Strong's Hebrew number 8199, and I'll put up graphics on the screen for you to see the pictographic form, their names, and some other cool graphics for you to pause the video, write down, draw, whatever. Shafat, the Brown Driver Briggs, to judge, govern, vindicate, punish, to act as a lawgiver. So you see how the Brown Driver Briggs describes this word in its definition. Then we got the Strong's definition. A primitive root to judge, that is, pronounce a sentence, for or against. By implication, to vindicate or punish. By extension, to govern. Passively, to litigate. So really interesting definition here. So honestly, judge meant something for us to rightly rule a people by. So the shafat, obviously, which is the word generally used, predominantly at least, as we'll see in the concordance to the Septuagint. I'll show that slide up on screen. That's the word generally translated as judgment, or sometimes even to plead. And it was shafat. The shin, the pei, and the tet. Now, in its pictographic form, it basically means to surround the mouth again, or the shin being the picture of the two front teeth, the pei being the picture of a mouth, and then the tet being a picture of a basket. Now, those three signify something. The two front teeth can mean to press to, bite down. That's where we get pressing. Destroy, destruction. You know, you're ripping up food with your mouth when you're chewing it. But we're pressing to what was spoken. So we're pressing to the mouth. What does that mean? Because the mouth is what spoke the commandments. It was the commandments that were spoken by Yah, written down by Moshe, that had commanded the kings to each write down in their sovereignty to keep as a copy for themselves, so they knew how to rightly rule the people. The kings were supposed to do that because that's how they were to judge and rightly rule the people, by the Torah. So here we are, we're pressing ourselves to what was spoken. And what is the picture of the tet? It's a basket. And that can mean surround, encircle. It can also mean like gather stuff to put into a basket. So what are we doing? We're encircling ourselves, or we're surrounding the commandments. It's that is what we're pressing ourselves toward, because that's how we have our relationship with our Father, by doing the things He said us to do and not doing the things He said for us not to do. The Torah was set to bring us blessings and cursings. You know, protection, obedience, disobedience. It'll get you a blessing, it'll get you a cursing. So This word here, one of the first occurrences of it, as we just saw, is also in Exodus 21, just after the commandments are given. See if I can find that real quick. Exodus chapter 21, we'll look at verse 1 and kind of speed through here. 81:99. I just had myself messed up. I was actually looking for Shaphat, but we see Mishpat, as I told you earlier, 49:41 in the Strong's, comes from Strong's 81:99, Shaphat. So Mishpat, Hebrew equals, Mishpat in Hebrew equals justice, judgment, ordinance, act of deciding a case. Let's go down here. A right, privilege, due, decision, legal matters, properly a verdict, favorable or unfavorable, pronounced judicially, especially a sentence or formal decree, human or particularly divine law, individual or collectively, including the act, the place, the suit, the crime, and the penalty, abstractly justice, including a particular right or privilege, statutory or customary, or even a style. So Shaphatim is where we get the Hebrew name for our English book of Judges, the book after Deuteronomy, or after Joshua, sorry. They are rulings from our Creator based upon the commandments, the mishpat. So when a righteous judge makes a ruling, they go back to the commandments, or they're supposed to. They don't necessarily do any more in our legal system of today, but anyway, they're not to make judgments based upon what they perceive to be right or wrong, but rather the scriptures. Duh! This is the background for Yeshua's comments in John chapter 7. Let's go there. John chapter 7. Let's choose the scriptures version, and we're going to go down to verse 23. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, are you wroth with me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. As we are followers of the Elohim, or the Most High El of Israel, we do have an obligation to judge, but we are to do it so righteously, surrounded by His perfect and precious everlasting commandments is the key. So here we have this whole dichotomy of leadership in the body of divisiveness today in this walk. And in my opinion, the sooner the body of Mashiach moves in righteous judgment, the sooner we will agree on the minor issues that we currently divide ourselves over. And Brother Hector over at Shalom Assembly posted a fantastic Facebook post on unification and divisiveness in the body. And it's my humble opinion that as leaders, we should just go ahead and accept the blame, because it's our fault for creating the environment of divisiveness. And we should be able to work with one another through such so that we can grow toward the advancement of the kingdom, the common goal. And I had said this to him earlier, to Brother Hector, of just my own basic observations of things going on over the past year within the body. I said, assemblies are organized gatherings. And I mean, that's just what they are. Many of them at least try to be. That's just my opinion anyway. But the only variable that we can control are the conditions inside of the organization, that being the assembly. So this is why we have leaders, because leaders set the conditions. The conditions are set out for us already by our true leader, the chief shepherd Yahweh, in His Torah. If we get the conditions right, the people will come together to advance the common good, and that is the good news, witnessing, visiting orphans, widows, the fatherless, the sick, etc. But if we get the conditions wrong, through our dictating, our supremacy, or our partiality, our harshness, our condemning, or etc., the people will use their time and energy to protect themselves from their own organizations, because they become used and abused, rather wanted and welcomed. And so this is how we see the word. I want to go to Romans 2. That's how we saw the word Shaphat, and that's the one that's predominantly used in the concordance to the Septuagint, and I'll put that slide up shortly. This says, "Therefore, O man, you are without excuse, everyone who judges, for in which you judge another, you condemn yourself." Shaul is saying this because if you go back in chapter 1 and read some of the context here in this verse, he's claiming to the people that, I don't know if it's the leaders there in Rome. This was an assembly not founded by Shaul, but he's writing to them because he's got word downwind, I guess, of what was going on. And the leaders were being hypocrites. They were telling the body of people to do this, this, and this, but they themselves, they weren't practicing the same things they were preaching. So Shaul's writing to them saying, hey, look, what makes you think you're going to escape the wrath of Elohim when you yourself practice the same wrongs that you're condemning and rebuking the people for? Therefore, O man, you are without excuse, everyone who judges. For in which you judge another, you condemn yourself, since you who judge practice the same wrongs. I just believe that there's a very fine line when it comes to our judging, and when it comes to doing correcting in love, instructing and training up in righteousness, as Timothy says. Let's go over there. My pinky hit the wrong button. All scripture, here at verse 16, all scripture is breathed out by Elohim and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for setting straight, for instructing in righteousness, that the man of Elohim might be fitted and equipped for every good work. So it is our duty to correct people and set them straight, but I think we've kind of also redefined these words here. You know, you can't just bash people with your mouth and with your tongue and create a forest fire that you can't put out because you've done so much damage. You've done more harm than good. We should humbly seek our neighbor and be so willing to serve others. You know, the Messiah said, for whoever of you wants to be greatest, let him be least. The Messiah also said, I didn't come here to be served, but to serve. You know, that's a perfect example of our true leader right there. We should all be the leaders for other people that we desire we have. Maybe that didn't come out right. You should be the leader that you wish you had, is what I'm trying to say. Be the leader to the people that you yourself wish you had over you. And that'll help guide you properly to be the one over somebody else. Because we all have somebody under us, we all have somebody above us. It's being able to find that proper balance in this walk, because we're so quick to divide over so many minor things. Yes, we all know to walk out the Torah in Messiah, obedience to his instructions, love our neighbor as ourselves, but I think we've tripped up a lot. Myself is included in this. I'm definitely not exempt by any matter from this. This teaching goes out and speaks to me just as much as it does to everybody who will view this. But it's truly in my humble opinion that we must change our behaviors, because if we don't know why we're being divided, then we're not going to know how to fix it. We're not going to know how to fix the division. So we must understand why it's happening. We shouldn't be little splinter ministries wanting to divide over every little issue, because that to me isn't truly the authority from Yah to help us get into a position to lead a body of people. We're all different. We're all human is the thing. We all have our setbacks and our failures and our times we've fallen short. But it's being able to stand next to the person and help them up and say, try again, keep moving forward, keep going. It's not how we start this walk out, but it's how we finish. And the idea should be going together, because together we can go far. All right, Shalom. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of our Wednesday word study. Stick around for part 2. It'll be up shortly. And let me know what you think in the comments below. In the meantime, Yahweh bless and have a great week.
Hope in Yahweh, ooh, Israel, hope in Yahweh.